Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled every week to bring you brilliant people from around the world. And as we talked about in the last episode, we are spending a couple of weeks talking about different instructional practices and ways that you, as the school or district leader, can support great instruction practices. Now, we had math last week, and this week, when I thought about reading instruction, immediately there was a name that came to mind who is not only brilliant in this area and who I religiously follow on social media for all the great ideas that she does with her own children and in schools, but is the incredible Amelia Capotosta. Amelia, thank you so much for being here. Can I let everybody know who you are?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I don't know that intro, that was I don't know if I can intro myself any better than that, Todd. That was wonderful. But yes, my name's Amelia Capotosta. I am actually an Ohio educator, and my passion in education does lie in literacy. It's one of those things that we all know that there's something that we're become really passionate about. So we research and we grow and we continue to look for ways to improve in that area. And literacy has been that for me. And what's been great for me, like Todd mentioned, if you follow me at all on social media, I'm also a mom of 3 boys. And so my life is just total chaos at home and everywhere else in the best ways possible. But it's a reinforcement of what I believe in, because I've seen it not only in the classroom, but I've seen it at home with my own children. And it's a full circle moment to see all these literacy practices that I've strive to continue to improve and learn to be in action in a classroom and with my own children. It's been pretty cool.
Well, I cannot wait to have this conversation, because last week we talked about math, and I love that because I was a math teacher. Yeah. But I was never a reading teacher, and I learned very quickly that when I became a principal, I kind of need to know a little bit at least about great instructional practices for all subject areas so I could really support my teachers. And so give me a little bit of background over your experience as a reading teacher. What grade levels have you taught? And I know for you, especially following your journey, you really had a lot of mind shifts along the way, even as a teacher, from what you thought about reading instruction when you became an educator to now what you know and believe and have seen with all the research and your own experience. So tell me a little about your reading journey.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was someone who, if you're not familiar with Ohio, our licensure is very strange. They're actually looking to change it. But so when I went through school, our licensure was you could do pre-K through 3 or 4 to 9, 7 to 12. Well, I was in that limbo of I'm not sure if I want to be elementary or middle. I don't know what I want to be, but I just know I want to teach. So I chose 4 to 9 and immediately I taught 6th grade initially. I've taught 4th grade. I've also taught 3rd grade because now that I have masters and literacy specialists, I can teach all the different grades. And I've also taught 8th grade. So I've kind of been in that realm and I've worked as a pre-K through 4th grade literacy coach. So I've kind of been in that realm of pre-K through 8th grade, really, in classroom and as a specialist. And what's wild is the reason I mentioned the licensure is when I went through undergraduate school for 4 to 9, all of our literacy courses were grounded in more of a balanced literacy approach. It was more in, expose them to reading and more in things like the 3 cueing strategy, things that we know have been since debunked. And so I get to my, classroom in 6th grade. I'm thinking, man, my first year teaching, I have a lot of 6th graders who really can't read. That's kind of a little bit startling and shocking. It's like a shocking moment to see that you have 6th graders that can't read. And then I got moved my 2nd year to 4th grade because 4th grade in Ohio is a big testing subject. We really want to see, we can make some changes in 4th grade. We'd love for you as a new teacher to help do this. So I get into 4th grade. And again, more than half my class is reading at a kindergarten or 1st grade level. I'm thinking something's not right here. I'm following the curriculum, following the plan. So I start to really research more into more foundational literacy, looking at phonics and phonemic awareness and these things that are never talked about in the upper elementary and middle school at the time, because this is, a while ago, and realizing this is what my kids need. And I start doing little bits, right? I'm going to sprinkle a little here in small group instruction. And I'm seeing great growth and strides. And so this is where I had a huge mindset shift. And I actually, this is where we talk about leaders and administration, how you can really make or break an experience for educators. I was lucky enough. I had one administrator in our district who I went to and said, hey, I teach 4th grade, but I really could use some phonics and instructional training. I really would love to do some foundational literacy training. I know you're sending pre-K through 2nd grade, but I need it too. And was told very quickly that I teach 4th grade. I don't teach phonics. And it was like, what? So luckily I had an administrator in my building who was like, no. Like you've shown me what you've been talking about. I support you. I trust you. And so he allowed me to take some sub days and go get this training. And it changed the entire trajectory of my career because I was able to change the entire trajectory of the students in my classroom that year. And the growth I saw was just astronomical implementing those practices. And so it just opened up this can of worms where I was like, wait, I got to know more, right? I have to learn more. And it just spiraled from there. So that it was just, let's go, right? And that's kind of where the journey's been.
Well, I think that's such a great reminder of you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And so being able to say that, this is a deficiency of mine, I'd like to go to this training. I think that's a great way that administrators can even just start supporting their reading teachers and doing that. And so let's say I'm an administrator and I'm doing walkthroughs. I'm going through different classrooms and I'm looking for some different things that I want to say, oh, that's a really great reading practice. But I don't really know a ton about great reading practice. Like maybe I'm a good reader or maybe I love to read, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be a great reading teacher necessarily. And so what are some things that when you work with teachers now are some of the big things that you're like, okay, this is a big look for me. Mm-hmm. This is a way that I really encourage teachers to do this when it comes to reading instruction or anything like that?
Absolutely. And I love that you asked that. Actually working with schools like all over, one of the things I created for a school, because I had a principal who's looking for the exact same thing. She's like, I need like a checklist. I need to walk into a room and be like, they should not be doing this, but they should be doing this. So like almost, things that need to probably be going away and things that need to be coming in. So I literally made her like a T chart of this is, kind of things of the past, strategies and practice of the past. And this is what we're looking for. So one of the major things I will always say that should forever be in any literacy classroom is some form of word study. So if you're walking in a classroom, and this might sound so basic, but the reason I refer to it as word study is because that can apply then to pre-K all the way up to 12th grade. Because really the foundation of reading, if we want to get to comprehension, which is our ultimate goal, right? To understand and comprehend anything we're reading to a higher degree, to be able to do that, we have to be able to decode, right? To be able to read the words on the page. And so what does that happen through? Well, of course, in our pre-K, kindergarten, first, second grade, we're really leaning heavily on the phonemic awareness and phonics. But I always say word study because that also can be vocabulary. That can be morphology, looking at prefixes and suffixes. It can just be giving students the opportunity to build words and play with words and do things with the language that we're trying to get them to read and comprehend. So I'm always looking at, we're not looking to memorize spelling words. We're looking to how are we sounding them out? We're looking to how do we analyze the word parts, take a look at rhyming. Even in older students, this is like a silly thing, but I'll never forget talking to one of my principals when I was teaching sixth grade, and I was telling him how one of my sixth graders couldn't rhyme, and he's like, "What do you mean they can't rhyme? Like, did we learn rhyming in preschool?" Like, this is a perfect example of word study. Had I not been doing just some word play and fun, sixth grade developmentally word play. But had I not been doing that, that would have never popped up. And I'm like, wait, this is where this student has some gaps right here that need to be addressed. So the first thing I always say is look for wordplay. Look on the, anchor charts on the wall that shows words being broken down, whether it's vocabulary, whether it's sounding things out, whether it's morphology, prefixes and suffixes. And then the second thing I think we always need to be looking for are what are the texts being put in front of students? So as an administrator, supporting the fact that we really want to put our students in a text-rich environment because exposure. And this is where I do think that sometimes, right now, with science of reading being such a big buzzword, there's all this heavy phonemic awareness and phonics, which of course is super important, but science of reading is the 5 pillars of literacy. So it's also vocabulary, it's also fluency, it's also comprehension. So we don't want to get away from exposing them to rich text. Like that's still the big part of it. That's how we grow readers. That's how we grow passionate readers, which is also a huge component of literacy. So looking at, or is there literature being put in front of them? And what's the quality of that literature that they're being exposed to on a daily basis? I think is really important as well.
Well, I love that. And you've got your own kids at home too. You mentioned at the top, we've got 3 boys, all differing ages, all different kind of interests. And sometimes even some people listening on here today are thinking, okay, I'm also thinking as a parent, like, how do I build some of this up in my own kids as a parent to support that? So I know I'm shifting gears here a little bit, but as you're talking about this, I'm thinking like of my own kids and thinking what I can do. And I know you really spend some time doing that with your own children. So if there are parents listening today thinking, I love this, Amelia, I can do this with my teachers, but I want to help at home too. Like, what are some things that you do with your boys at home?
Absolutely. And actually, this is perfect because it is parallel to what I did in the classroom and what I've done in the classroom with other schools. And that is really looking at integrated literacy, like integrating literacy in all parts of our day. It goes with, you talked to Brittany Hagee for math last week. Literacy is part of math, right? To be able to complete math, they have to be able to read and understand it. So same thing with as a parent, I'm always looking for ways that I can authentically integrate literacy in our daily practices in our day. A very simple example comes to mind because just did this last week. I was at a restaurant with my children. We're sitting there, and my 10-year-old has now recently started to just kind of like take notice of the world around him a little bit more. And he looks up, he's like, Mom, there are so many people on screens at this restaurant, right? Like everyone's on a tablet or a phone. And at the time, my husband's laughing because we were waiting for our food and I pulled a book out of my purse. And of course, I have a book with me at all times, right? Who doesn't? And it was a simple picture book called Roller Coaster. It's one of those ones. It's just very simple picture book about riding a roller coaster. But my 10-year-old, my 7-year-old, and my 4-year-old I read this book to them while we waited for our food, and they were all captivated by it. And so a simple practice like that, where they're just being exposed to literacy. We're sitting down waiting for dinner. We're not going to pull a screen up. And it was perfect because we had just been to our local amusement park the week before. So they're talking about the roller coasters they've rode. And so they're connecting to this literature I'm putting in front of them. And it's a simple thing as pulling a book out of my bag. It's also simple things like at home, when they get home from school, not to jump to turn the TV on, grab a book, sit down, calm down from your day with a book in front of you instead of a screen. Or we're talking, I'm in the car with my 4-year-old on the way to preschool, and I'm pointing out signs. And it's like, what sound does McDonald's start with? And we're saying that sound. Or he now will do it on his own, and he'll be like, Mom, let's play the rhyming game. And he'll just start spewing out words. And I'm like, I'm trying to focus on the directions, but let me try and rhyme too. But it's good, right? And it's just all of those little things. And I think it does seem like a daunting task as a parent and a teacher because reading does seem so complicated. But when all those little things add up to big, right? Like every little piece of your day like that can be huge. And I think, so many parents and caregivers, they read to their kids every night. That right there. That's a literacy practice because the beginnings of reading are top to bottom, left to right, words on the page. That's it, right? And we're doing that on our laps, which is amazing.
Well, I think there's so many things there that just resonated with me so deeply. And the first is that how easy it is to incorporate reading when you make it a priority. And I think that is a clear differentiator that you're saying here, because and I'm also seeing the parallels between school. Like as an administrator, walk around with the book. Like when you visit, like read it at lunch when kids are done. Like grab some kids and say, hey, y'all are finished with your trays. Do you want to come over and read? Or at bus line or car. Like there's so many ways to bring that in where anytime you see like, oh, it'd be easy to pull an iPad out, think, would it be easy to pull a book out as well? Because even thinking through my own experience, I'm trying to raise boys who are readers too. And so we go to the barber shop and they bring books with them. They don't bring an iPad. And just the other week, the barber said, how can your 3-year-olds literally sit there so calm with just a book? Like mine have to have a device. And I said, well, they don't have a choice. Like we love reading books. I bring a book everywhere. That's just their natural list. This is entertaining to me. And do my kids at 3 know how to read? No, but they love looking at the pages, seeing the letters that we've talked about. Like, I think that there's so many parallels that you can make that it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes we overcomplicate this. And I think you brought up some great, and I love that. Like, I've never brought a book to a restaurant. And I don't know why. I don't know why that hasn't crossed my mind when I take it everywhere else, but I'm totally doing that next time because it's such an easy thing to do.
It is. Absolutely. And like you just mentioned, literacy is everywhere. That's the thing I think I always remind myself is there are opportunities everywhere you go to expose students to literature. And like you mentioned in the classroom, one quick thing too, audiobooks. People always are first to shame audiobooks, but that's not reading. Reading is comprehending, right? So whether you're listening comprehension and oral those are different skills, of course, but reading is comprehension. So audiobooks. I remember a couple of years we had a really chaotic, and I'm sure any principal administrator listening to this can relate to this, where our end of the day was just total chaos because we had bus shortages and everything. So our end of the day pack up was like a 30-minute time. Well, that's really hard when you can't do new instruction because half your kids are being pulled and half your kids are here. So it's like, what do we fill this time with? And I couldn't be reading a book to the students. I ideally would have been like to have been reading, but I'm dealing with making sure this kid gets to this place and this kid safely gets to this place, right? So I would put on audiobooks and my students would sit captivated in these audiobooks. In fact, I'd have kids that'd be like, I don't want to go on the bus. I want to hear what happens. Like, honey, I'll post it on our Google Classrooms so you can listen at home. Like, you have to go. The bus is not going to wait for you to see what happens in chapter 3. Like, you got to go. But even stuff like that, that's an exposure to literature for sure.
Well, and I think that's so cool too, because that just reminded me, my wife takes walks every morning with the boys, and sometimes they get a little crazy on the walk, and she'll put an audiobook on her phone and just play it out loud for the boys. And they love hearing audio stories. And
Oh
so
my gosh.
and podcasts, there's so many great ways
Yes,
that the kids can consume this information. And
absolutely.
so, okay, so as we're nearing the end of our conversation, I mean, I know we could talk about this for hours,
For days,
Amelia.
hours and days. Yep.
But so I'm an administrator. I'm listening now, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm understanding this. I'm gonna make some of these changes, but like Amelia, I'm overwhelmed. Like I've got
Yeah.
1,000 things on my plate. I don't even know where to begin. What would be a good starting point for administrators in really supporting high quality reading instruction?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things that I see when I work with schools all the time consistently is there has to be some vertical alignment of best practices. And I think the starting point that they can do is to facilitate those conversations. I think for right now, there's been a big conversation with every state having legislation around fidelity, right? We're teaching curriculums with fidelity. And I would love to flip that script as an administrator and change it to more integrity, because fidelity, it doesn't need to be we're following a script exactly as it is. That's not teaching the students in front of us. But I think as an administrator, if you can facilitate vertical alignment conversations, and I always say it's like, 5 to thrive for literacy, right? We want to implement phonemic awareness. We want to implement phonics, fluency, vocabulary comprehension. We're 5 to thrive with those practices. And that goes for pre-K through 12th grade. That doesn't mean you're teaching phonemic awareness in 12th grade, but it means that those foundations have been laid. And then if they don't have them, you are targeting instruction in a small group or, an RTI model or whatever that is for pull out. But if we can, as an administrator, lead that, give them the space and the time and facilitate those conversations, even if you're not knowledgeable on that topic. If you know, hey, these are the 5 components of literacy, I'm going to facilitate meetings for the first quarter. We're going to focus on pillar 1. And I'm going to give them time to vertically align those practices so there's no gaps and holes. And I'm going to, again, flip the script from fidelity to integrity, meaning we're going to pledge to commit to teach the curriculum that the pieces of the curriculum we know are going to teach with integrity our students the literacy practices we believe in. And so if administrators can take one step at a time, like one pillar, maybe it's a pillar a year even, and go slow to go fast, because that's the biggest thing. I mean, we all know that education, we tend to fly the plane and then build it as we fly it, right? So instead,
Right.
if we can slow it down and do one thing at a time, I think that's where it starts, right? And that's where having a great leader is so beneficial. If you're like, hey, you know what? Let's talk to my teachers. And if I'm in a K-5 school, we're going to sit down, it's K-5, and we're going to talk about what non-negotiables we have for literacy, and we're going to get aligned, and we're going to commit to it, and we're going to track it, and we're going to grow it based on data, and then we're going to commit to the next one and keep moving on. I think would be huge.
I love that. I think so many times as administrators, we're focused on what this grade level needs, what this grade level needs, that we forget those vertical conversations and making sure that everybody's aligned so that blame game doesn't start. Well, you should have covered this, or they should have been here. It's like, no, we've had those conversations. Everybody knows what everybody needs to build upon for the next one to be successful, and we're all on the same page. So I love that so much. So Amelia, you have so much more to offer, and you also do, in my opinion, some of the best, most energetic, high quality trainings. You've got a lot of materials online. So if administrators are listening today going, I love what she has to say, I love her energy, like I need more, how can they connect with you to get more information?
Absolutely. So it's easy to find me on social media. It's just my name. So I know it's kind of a complicated name, but you can see it there if you watch this, or you'll see it in the description. But Amelia Capotosta on all social media platforms. My website is also my name, ameliacapotosta.com. And if you want to dive in at all, one of the other big passions I have is implementing some of these things in upper elementary, because upper elementary gets left off. And so I actually have a website called literacylive.com. And on Literacy Live, I go into more upper elementary detail, which there isn't a lot of resources out there to support upper elementary. So I try and do that. And I just have to say, I love that you said that about, offering professional development with energy, because that's exactly what you do. And I have had some really great schools I've been working with the last couple of weeks, and we've had these conversations surrounding the fact that we can have the best intentions for professional development and to grow and to make this. But if we're not making it, just like for our students, for our teachers, engaging and purposeful, we lose them, right? And so that's forever my ultimate goal when I go into school, is I want these teachers to feel empowered. And I don't want to make them leave there being like, oh my gosh, she just threw 25 things at me. I want them to leave there being like, that was fun, and she taught me 25 things that I can use tomorrow. And so that's always my ultimate goal for implementation for anything I do. So I love going
And I gotta say, just as another note, you do the most fun hands-on stuff too. So even though all of this is great reading instruction and practice and stuff, you bring in that hands-on element, and they get to do the stuff that they're going to be asking kids to do. So I love that. Well, Amelia, thank you so much for coming on today and for sharing with our listeners and our viewers. I hope if you're listening, you gained a lot of insight. Make sure you join us next week for an all-new episode. And if you are a pre-K through 8th grade administrator in Texas, yes, middle and junior high too, don't forget to visit TEPSA.org. That's TEPSA.org for more information about how you can join or all the other materials that we offer to support you. Have a great day, everyone.